to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Christensen.
Here.
Cunningham. Whitmer.
Here.
Breinig.
Here.
Hollenbeck.
Here.
Kumbier.
Here.
McNally.
Here. Okay, can we all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lisa, proof of posting?
The agenda was posted in the upper and lower levels of the Amundsen Community Center, the Cambridge Post Office, Hometown Bank, and the village website.
All right, okay. Public appearances. Mr. Scott, would you like to come up? Please.
I just had the pleasure of attending the Audit and Finance Committee last week about an issue, the fountain in the park on Main Street. And I found out that later that they were able to find some money to put back into this project, so the fountain will be there. And I would just like to publicly thank the Audit and Finance Committee for their diligence in their work. Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing your concern to our attention. It's nice to know that people have an opinion and will let us know, so thank you.
Okay, any other public appearances? All right. Moving on, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Carries. Moving on, reports. I've got a couple of items to just mention here. One, the Economic Development Committee has been kind of put together, and we are having our first meeting, and that is scheduled for next Monday, November 18th at 5:30 p.m. So we'll be here.
Here?
Yes, on the Amundsen Center. So just to let you know that that's going on. The other item that I wanted to mention, and I'll just read this because it's not very much. You're invited to join us for a community Thanksgiving dinner at Willerup Church. Come at 11:30 and share great food and fellowship with all the fixins. All are welcome. Give us a call, 608-423-3777, to let us know how much turkey to prepare. Free rides, and the dinner is free as well. And that is Thursday, November 28th, 2019 at 11:30. So it's being put on here by the local church, and those of you here and out in television land, if you don't have plans, well, now you've got a place to go and perhaps get a bite to eat.
Friendsgiving.
Okay. Audit and Finance Committee. What,
The items for the Audit and Finance Committee are all on the agenda, so we'll be taking them up later.
Nope. Next agenda.
Next agenda.
budget.
Well, one of them's on this one, the audit,
Yes,
the
one
RFP is on this
Yeah.
one. For the audit, RFP's on
And
this
the-
one, and then the next meeting
the-
will be taking up our budget.
Fee schedule and.
Oh, yeah, and then the licensing stuff,
Yeah.
that's on this agenda.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
sorry I jumped in too quick. If you are on here, the budget will be on the next one.
Yep, good. Thank you.
okay. All right. Village office updates.
Mainly working on budget stuff. Audit and Finance did meet 3 times, so we've been working on all the budget, getting the numbers together, preparation, the publication, and so forth. Tax preparation, starting that. Barb and I both went to training with the Dane County Treasurer's Office, starting on the special assessments that will go on the tax bill. The audit RFP is on this agenda. And the trash and recycling, the contract had been reviewed by Mary Baling. We went through, made some changes, that's been sent back to them for final approval. We did receive word, and we're thinking we'll put something in with the tax bills. The last pickup for advanced disposal will be December 26th. So after they pick up, they will have a truck following along to pick up the bins. And if they don't get them all on the 26th, they will come back through on Friday to pick up bins. We will arrange with them if people are out of town and so forth, what will be done. At that same time, we're working with Badgerland on the distribution of the new bins. We will be setting up a staging area. Well, they'll be dropped off, and they will be going around dropping off the new bins. So, working on
And,
that.
One question on that, and when do we have the opportunity to let them know what size bin we want?
You should have received a letter in the mail. Went out to all homeowners.
I've not seen it, so I will have to ask my husband if he has.
And otherwise,
Schedule
we will
that.
have copies that has the number to call if
Okay,
you would like
great.
different bins.
October 31st.
They are collecting on Mondays.
October 31st.
They will be collecting on Mondays.
Oh, no.
So that
Great.
first period will be a little bit longer. Advanced last pickup is on a Wednesday, and it will be a week and a half then before Badgerland picks up the first Monday of the new year. So that first interval will be a little longer.
Well,
They
every
said they'll
New
work
Year's
with
Eve.
people, especially with the holidays, if there's additional stuff that first pickup.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Mainly budget stuff.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Lisa. All righty, moving on here. We've got bills in the amount of $456,644.89. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills and set them out.
I'll second.
All right, questions? I have a couple here, Lisa. One, Badger Bank, we're going to move $400,000 over.
Yes.
Okay. Can you just let us know at this time what the incentive is or why we're doing that? And
The account that we have with Badger Bank, they are willing to match the local government investment pool rate, which is over 2% on daily ongoing basis, whereas our other accounts are less than 1% in earnings. Like maybe 0.2%. So the incentive is to gain more interest income
Wow.
by having it placed in that account at Badger Bank at a higher rate of return.
okay,
sense
so
to
we'll
me.
pick up a percent then.
Yeah,
Almost.
over 1 3/4%
Okay.
is
All
what
right.
we'll pick up.
Thank you. And then the other item, I noticed on the last page, we have capital projects fund in the 200 series, and it's 7250, and I'm seeing the Melster site cleanup. Is that being coded to capital projects, or is there something else that I'm not tracking here?
I am coding it to capital projects as a separate project in and of itself, because it will end up being a larger expenditure. It's one to keep track of in its own fund, or own account within a capital projects account.
All right. So then we're just going to add that to the cost basis that we have, and it's,
Right.
okay. All right.
And that's a tracking purpose.
Okay, those were the only questions I had. Anybody else? Okay, it's money, so Lisa?
Trustee Cunningham, Whitwer,
Yes.
Reinig,
Yes.
Hollenbeck,
Yes.
Kumbier,
Yes.
Christensen. Yes. McNally.
Yes. All right, passes. Moving on, new business and any possible action. We'll start off with the audit RFP responses and the awarding of the contract.
We did have 4 responses to the RFP. Included in your packet was a brief summary Have contacted references and so forth from Hawkins Ash, who did come in as the low. All of the communities are very happy with them. We were questioning in the contract, it did say they could bill for additional assistance at their discretion. All of the communities I spoke to said they don't see bills unless it's something major that they are asking them for assistance. So
Wow.
everybody came back very happy that I talked to.
Then I make a motion that we accept the bid from Hawkins and Ash to provide our auditing services for the next 3 years.
Mhm.
I'll second that.
Okay. Further discussion necessary? All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of Hawkins Ash as the auditors of record for the next 3 years.
I have a question. This year, we had an issue with some extra Excel spreadsheets that needed to be filled out. Did we touch base with them and
We
make sure
did,
that
they had asked questions before they returned the RFP, and we had made it clear that those are the types of things that we expect them
Okay,
to
it
do, and,
was a positive
um,
response? then?
yeah.
Okay.
One of the communities I spoke to said every year, or every month, at the end of the month, they will provide Hawkins Ash with a list of any new assets or anything that was sold for depreciation. So they have the whole year, they can keep
Nice.
track of them and so
Sure.
forth.
Okay,
So,
all right. That's all I have.
Okay, all those in favor of approval, or voting on the approval of Hawkins Ash for our auditor of record for the next 3 years, please signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, carries. Moving on, ordinance 2019-02, amending Chapter 6.04 relating to dogs and other animals, recommendation for audit and finance. Lisa?
I was gonna say, can I speak to this?
Yeah.
Lisa? So, when we were going through the, line by line through the budget, like we do every year on audit and finance, we came to the cat license line, and we realized last year we collected all of $50 for the cat licensing. Probably more than 10 cats in town, but that's all that we were collecting for. We then identified that the village itself has to actually pay for those licenses for the cats and the administrative overhead of tracking, et cetera. We are losing money by issuing cat licenses. So it was the recommendation from the Audit and Finance Committee to remove licensing cats from our ordinances. So that's the background of it. So I will make a motion to accept the ordinance change for number 2019-02, an ordinance amending section 6.04 of the Village of Cambridge ordinances regarding dogs and other animals.
And I'll second.
So now if we want to further discuss. If anybody wants to know why we,
So we expect to save a little bit of money here.
we expect to save a little bit of money. I think just, it was it was a nice idea in the past, probably to try and, other communities might have been doing it, but we don't feel like we want to go door to door to enforce the licensing of cats.
Yeah.
And so without that desire to enforce that licensure, it didn't make sense for us to keep it on the
Yeah,
books.
Chad wouldn't be a big fan of that.
Yeah, probably not.
All right. So Morris is going to get away, and we aren't going to do much. Okay.
So you're going to eliminate the cat license and increase the dog license fees?
Yep. But the
Actually-
dog license fee,
That's the
that's
next
the next
agenda
item on the
Yeah,
agenda.
I see
There's a
that.
specific reason for that,
That's fine.
so.
Okay, well, with regard to ordinance 2019-02, we have a motion and a second, correct? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that one carries. Would you like to let us know what's going on here with 2019-11? Licenses, permits, administrative fees as well on that one?
Yeah,
Paula?
so on that one, a couple of things we're looking at. So overall, from a budget perspective, the dog license fees are going up $5. We are recommending it go up $5. That $5 increase is actually an increase that Dane County is requiring. So that $5 increase will go right to Dane County. The Village of Cambridge is not increasing that. It's, that increase to go through is required by Dane County. So that's why we're putting that increase of $5 for the dog license fees. Removing the cat license fee, and then refuse and recycling, we're going to be increasing that fee from, we're recommending we increase that fee from $85 to $100. The charge of $85 per year hasn't changed since 2012. And the additional $15 per year will help to offset our trash and recycling fee. It is important to note, though, that the village is still subsidizing a portion of that, because what the cost per household or per pickup spot is actually $120.84. And so we are just asking for residents to pay the $100 per year for trash and recycling,
Okay,
with the village picking up the rest.
all right. I'll entertain a motion for this.
I'll entertain a motion, or I'll make a motion for the village to pass Resolution 2019-11 relating to licenses, miscellaneous permits, and administrative service fee schedule.
I'll second.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second. Further discussion necessary? Okay, all those in favor of approval of Cambridge Resolution 2019-11, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, carries. All right. Moving on to Cambridge Foundation request. Lisa?
This is just something I want the board to start thinking about, talking about. Applications to the foundation are due in December, and input from the board on what they would like to see us requesting through that grant. I did talk to the police. The one thing that they did mention, in the past, the foundation has helped do the speedboard signs, that their next choice for a speedboard sign would be coming into town on Main Street. So that's one thing they'd like to see. They did suggest to also possibly looking at the cost of a portable one that could be placed in different areas of town. Not the big one that the county provides us, but a smaller one if we need on side streets, if we're seeing issues, or, but one coming in on Main Street would be their next area. They'd like to see one. We have them coming in here by the by the middle school, the elementary school, and coming into town on 1218.
Okay.
It would be nice to have one coming in from 12 and Robinson, yeah.
Or
Yep, that would be nice.
So we need to get those in by
yeah,
December 31st.
yeah, and well, the request, but we'd like board
Mhm.
approval of what's going on that request. So,
Right.
people have ideas, want to start talking about it, we can have it on one of the next couple.
Would it make sense to put one on 18 also?
That is a spot that they would ultimately like one.
Sure.
12 would be their priority.
Yeah, absolutely.
18, it does slow down.
Gradually.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
it's
incremental.
stepped down anyway, so,
Yeah. So that would be a future one
sure.
that they'd like to see.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Question about the foundation. Are they still looking for more brick and mortar type?
They do prefer brick and mortar type,
Okay.
physical.
All right.
Okay. All right, so,
Get our
I
wish
guess-
list together.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll just, yeah. At
There's-
a future meeting, we'll look at what those are and,
Yeah,
So
there
if
isn't
anybody
anything to
has
vote on.
suggestions, forward them to me and we can put together a list for the board to look at.
All right.
all right,
We talked
thank you.
Public Works at one point wanting blinky lights on crossing Main Street somewhere downtown. Another set of the blinky lights.
Mm.
I think we talked about that.
A
publicly.
crossing.
Yeah.
All right.
It would kind of be
Okay.
nice to have one of those crossing lights up by Veterans Park on that end of Main Street, because that might actually,
There is one up a little
on
further,
High Street, way
but
up on
yeah.
High Street,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we'll try to get those to you in the next meeting, and then we can discuss them for the only meeting that we'll have in December. And then you'll prepare those and submit that to the foundation. All right. Moving on, authorizing Town and Country to move forward with the preliminary survey and the plans for the bike trail as plans are available and funding. Hi,
Hello, Tom.
Tom. Can you introduce yourself, Tom? And
I'm Tom Beast with Town and Country Engineering. I'm here tonight to come to the board after the Bike Trail Committee has asked us to begin design work on the bike trail connection between the Camrock Bike Trail and Glacial Drumlin Trail. As you know, the village has previously agreed to be the financial steward and fiscal agent for this project. We understand the village has some concerns with being responsible for the funding in that regard, and we've agreed to proceed with the Bike Trail Committee, provided that the village board is comfortable with authorizing us to move forward. And we also agree to limit our work to the funds that are available from the committee, and we'll keep the village apprised of our work to date on a month-to-month basis through our regular invoicing. So tonight, we're presenting you with a scope of services for design engineering services and survey work to get us up through bidding and then construction administration. If we're to do construction observation, that would be an additional cost if requested. As you know, the village had been awarded a grant from Dane County for 50% matching funds of the amount of $209,450 towards this project. Since the last regular board meeting, the ad hoc trail committee has secured some outside sources to fund portions of this work, and has also obtained an agreement with the county to give matching funds towards that work as it proceeds. So, again, we're willing to move forward just to get some things on paper. We got some upcoming grant applications that are due at the beginning of the year, next year, and Chris James from Dane County was at one of our bike trail meetings, and he was just advocating to try to get some design done that would look better as we ask for other grant money, both from DNR, and we're also going to be pursuing some other grant packages. So I don't know if you have any questions on this. We're just wanting to get this on paper so that the village board is completely aware of what's going on and is authorizing the work to be done. Now, this doesn't commit you financially to anything. As I said, we're only going to work forward as far as the committee raises funds. Whether the village is party to that or not, it doesn't matter to us. We're the village's consultant, and we want to continue our relationship with the village, and we'll work in that regard, so.
All right.
I'll make a motion to authorize Town and Country to move forward with the preliminary survey and plans for the bike trail as funds are available.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion or questions? Chris?
I have a question. As I wasn't at the last meeting, I'm looking at the previous notes, and it states here, Bob Saloff asked the village to provide $5,000 and add it to the account of $3,800 to get started on design work for this project. Can you?
We didn't do that.
Okay. All right. That's all I have.
All right.
And I should note that this is an estimated cost of $50,000 to $80,000, depending on the scope of work, and we'll just continue to charge out at our standard hourly rates.
So you said the county was willing to match as they go along, instead of just
Lump sum.
some at the end?
That's my understanding from
Cool.
talking with committee members, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Keep it moving along.
That'll help the community.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize Town and Country to move ahead with their survey and plans for the bike trail as funds are available. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay,
Thanks.
thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you, Tom.
If you would sign one copy and just have it returned to us, that would be great. So,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. We're going to move on, and we're going to get into unfinished business. I see Karen. First up, update from the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you.
Good evening, Karen.
You used to work with your husband?
Thanks.
Thank you.
In front of you is the proposal that you asked I put together for what the chamber proposes to do with the unspent money that was given to the chamber for marketing purposes for the calendar year of 2019. I'm not sure if you want me to read this or what you want me to do, so.
Why don't you hit the highlights at least?
The reason that we have the reason that we have money left over is because we didn't use the amount of money that was allocated for employment costs. Our employee only works 15 hours a week, and she, most of the time spends maybe 2 hours on stuff that we feel we can directly charge to the village. So that's the unanticipated consequence of that. We propose that we use the remainder in the following ways: $1,000 to contract with the Madison Region Economic Partnership to have them do training for economic development within the village, continued enrollment in tourism organizations, printing the 2020 calendar of events and map, continued promotion of village-wide events such as Cambridge Classic Christmas, and if there were any overages, we might possibly use them to help pay for the Welcome to Cambridge signs.
I'll
Which
make a
we-
motion to have the village staff work with our attorney to draw up whatever changes are necessary in the existing contract to incorporate the changes as outlined in the letter received from the chamber on 11/12.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion. I just noticed that it's Cambridge Classic Christmas. I thought it was going to be just Cambridge Christmas, and I know we
Yeah,
talked.
our
but-
marketing person said no,
Okay.
to leave the classic.
So we're going to leave Classic in there.
Yes.
They like the three-word alliteration.
I guess so.
There we are. So Karen, I think, I'm, although you didn't do everything that we had said this year, that we had laid out the money for, I give the chamber a lot of credit for being very conscious on how you guys were using the village money and making sure that it was going for those things that was for the full village and not just, things that might be just chamber related. So, so it's easy for me to say yes to this change because of how you treated the money that we have given you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chris?
It's also easy for myself, but I do have a question for our staff is, if we do an alteration to these terms, we have to send it to our lawyer. What's that cost going to be?
It'll be an hourly rate. Depends how long it takes her.
Okay.
Could be up to $300.
All right. I would.
Change the contract.
That's $300 that we have to incur within our village. I would propose that that comes out of the excess money that you have.
I think that's reasonable.
All right, we
Good
want
idea,
to
Chris.
change the...
So I will amend the motion to include the cost to go to the cost to draw up the new agreement to be incurred out of these funds.
I'll say.
All right, further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of giving this to our attorney to have her go ahead and redo the agreement with the Chamber of Commerce, and then you'll get billed for Mary Billings.
It'll just
Yeah.
come out of the money we've already given them.
Yeah,
because
they'll have to
it
write a
really
check.
isn't money because we've already given
We
them all
have
this
already
money.
given
It's already
them
been
So
money.
it's just a redirection of how we're using it. So,
But they would then receive the bill for the
Correct.
attorney fees.
No, right, it's just check.
yep.
Okay, all right. So that's the motion and the second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All
Great.
right.
I have one question about that, just because we want to start the conversation with MadRep about the training. Do you have any idea how long it would take to redo the contract?
I will get it to Mary tomorrow, and
Okay, yeah,
I don't anticipate it would take long.
okay, thank you.
And I would think, Karen, you can engage in those conversations
Yeah.
and get something scheduled before it's signed off.
Okay,
That's fine.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. The Melster site update. Joe, I saw you here. Please step forward and introduce yourself.
Did you print off anything from this
I did give them copies of the,
report?
yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna hand this out for reference too. That's something part of it. Keep that up.
Sure, thanks.
Joe?
Too exciting, except something that was done in the past that I want to be able to refer to.
Thank you.
If it should be shared.
Sure. Oh, you can share. Yeah, that's okay. The girls can share.
I like wanting to referring to colors and stuff, but anyway. Joe DeYoung, MSA Professional Services, here to obviously deal at the Melster site. This has been ongoing probably since spring, if I remember correctly, and we've been slowly plucking away at this, trying to keep the DNR informed, trying to keep you guys informed, and got at least some information to bring back to you to discuss. So right now, what you have in front of you was a report that was printed off, basically of the summary of what we found on the site. I don't think there's any surprise that in September we went out there, dug a bunch of test holes, informed the DNR. I think one stopped out for a little while, and then obviously put this report together that eventually we want your permission to submit to the DNR and let them know what we found. And all said and done, when you think about, yes, material is buried on the site. I don't think anybody here is too surprised. It's pretty much what we expected. When we did at home again and we found a bunch of it, we were pretty much aware of it, so I don't think there's any shocker there. But I do think that the fact that it is spread out, it wasn't where we assumed it was completely, that we found it kind of sporadically outside of some of the old building footprints, that it's hard to predict exactly where it is, except we got a feel for it on what kind of area, what kind of concentration, things like that, but it is pretty much scattered throughout that area. It's a fair statement to say. What happens now is obviously in the report there is some documentation. We took samples of the water, we submitted in. There was some arsenic found, there was some lead found, and before everybody goes, oh my gosh, this is bad, no, what we found is that when you uncompacted the site and have these areas of just rubble put in, nothing compacted, that it's holding water. Right? It can't escape. It's kind of like basements that never got filled in now have trapped water. So it's not even groundwater, it's just this trapped, suspended water. And because of it, some of the metal that's mixing with it is showing the samples. We don't think it's necessarily contamination. What we think is that it's just debris that has groundwater mixed with it. That was what was tested. Even though this is kind of what our opinion is, it has to be submitted to the DNR. They're going to have a chance to review it, and we do have anticipation that they're probably going to ask you to put some groundwater monitoring wells in just to keep track of it, to see if there's anything that's migrating and stuff and moving along. So overall, I don't think we found anything unexpected, except obviously we didn't find anything that was really that excellent either. So the reason for me to be here tonight is obviously, one, to tell you about the report and tell you that our next suggestion is to submit it to the two guys from the DNR that met with us and let them review it and have their evaluation of it. The main reason why I'm here tonight is to talk to you about something else, is about what is your goals and aspirations for the site. I know I've mentioned it before, I know we discussed it, but the bottom line is that if there's any direction on what you think this site could be, I'd rather be steering it and looking towards it with the DNR for that solution rather than waiting and deciding. Now your two options, obviously, and why I provided you this schematic from 2013, wasn't necessarily to say that this is something that you could do. But it's kind of to tell you, it's like, okay, you have two options, and one of them of which is get permission to leave this stuff on material, cover it up, and be able to dissolve it and leave the site as is, and basically transition it into some type of recreational park type facility. It's kind of like putting a cap on it, leaving it where it is, and being able to maintain what it is and not be able to have what you thought you were when you bought this. The second option is obviously the remediation of removing the site, getting it site pad ready, making it constructible, and then doing something that you can see that's proposed in the current layout that was there, even though we know, like I said, the assisted living is in a different spot, that type of thing, but having that type of option as well. So from that kind of standpoint, having some discussion about it from a board level and a community level, I thought would be kind of important. Also, there's options, obviously, to look for funding. Where do we go from here? If you pick one or the other, that could steer directions on what my company does and what we've done for many other places. Where would you get the funding in order to maybe be able to offset some of this cost that you're about to take on? So with that said, obviously, I'm here kind of for a lot of questions. I got some ideas of what I'm thinking, but I think the biggest thing is for you to grasp behind is obviously the fact is, yeah, we still have a problem out there. It's still going to be a slow process, which the DNR is aware of. Getting them the report will be a big step, and then also letting them decide what they think is going to be necessary, I almost think is a given. But I would like to know exactly how you guys feel and what questions you have for me, because at the end of it, we still have to have some direction from you on how you want this to be transitioned.
So,
Mark? Okay, that's all right.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
As I say, so do we have to do, is it all or nothing? Can we say there are portions of this that we would like to just leave as is and not do any improvement on, and then portions that we would potentially look at improving?
Yeah, there's no reason that you can't. I mean, what's problem is I don't have any nice way of telling you where the best place on site is unless I can find something that's undisturbed. So one of the things we did look into as I talked to your utility director, because you have some sewer and water and some utilities for your sewer that go through. And he didn't have a preference that he can work around it, so one of the plans is we'd have to relocate it. So I think we're sitting good there, but if you had to pick a spot like where the assisted living went, which was a lot of original soil, that would be a possibility. When you look at it and you see the overview and the reason why, and like I said, I got several maps here of the transition of the site. If there's an area that didn't have a building before, hopefully they didn't dig a hole and put it, you might have a better site, but it seems to be a little bit further away. One of the bigger issues you have that we're dealing with, and this is what the DNR is focused on, is the two lines that are shown in this showing your floodplain. Back in 2013, the floodplain was in a different place than what it is today. And although you see it's proposed, I think this is great documentation, is that the fill might have not been located in the floodplain at the time that the project took place, which is documentation of something that's going to be critical to the DNR. So with that being said, I do want to show that to you, that you do have some restrictions on what you can develop with that floodplain, and you do have the ability to adapt a floodplain or change a floodplain, because if you imagine it, when you get to the creek, it might be this deep. By the time you get to the line it's only this deep. Well, it isn't so hard to come like this and gouge it out and do compensatory storage. Very common, very costly, but again, at the end of the day, that's what we were looking at when we were developing this site plan. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Ted?
Well, I guess the initial intent was to, when the Milster property came down, was to completely clean up the site, remove all concrete. The existing concrete on the site was to be crushed and left on the site, and that was not done. And
Yeah.
my feeling is that we should go forward and clean the site up so we can put this property back on the tax rolls. Just covering up with a little black dirt's not going to do anything for us.
This is,
I think.
And we're going to be limited.
Yeah, but I think we as a village need to take a look at what's the current market look like? What does, I mean, I think adjusting that floodplain area is going to be, would be definitely advantageous for us, because we don't have to, we wouldn't want to clean up, we wouldn't have to or want to clean up those things in that floodplain area. So look at what's realistic to be able to use. And then is there interest in that site for further development?
Well, there was initially that,
Well, that was how many years
Assisted
ago?
Living had a plan for that whole site.
But they
And-
developed elsewhere.
I don't know.
Okay, Chris?
I was initially a fan of cleaning it up and developing it so we can get some kind of a return on investment for that remediation.
yep.
But where my plans kind of got thwarted a little bit with that is of course the cost, nothing is free, and also the fact that the floodplain changed drastically. So from a developer standpoint, there's already red flags with that. So I think I'm more aligned with the green space aspect of it from my standpoint. So
I'll give you my opinion because this is fun for me, but
Yeah.
floodplain is something I can adjust. I
Right.
can work around it. You have some wetland issues out there, you have some concerns with the waterway, but what you see right there in the footprint that's being provided
Yeah.
actually is outside of the floodplain.
okay.
And so that is possibly developable without even going through it, but it shows you the potential units and stuff, but it goes right through the heart of the old building, which would be a lot of remediation to clean it up. The issues I have is not that I can do a floodplain, I can get that taken care of, because like I said, I know we have a lot of involvement with this. My issue is that there's so much uncertainty with the cleanup of the site that before I
How
would
is that
tell you
gonna
I'm
affect
excited about it, is that I can tell you what it takes to do a floodplain. What I can't tell you is what is the cost to remediate it and get it up to speed. It'd be more of the concern that I would have.
So are we putting the cart before the horse then in this situation? Do we have to kind of wait for what the DNR says in their response before we can really make this decision?
Well, partially, but I do
Right.
want to know what the flavor of the board is too. So to be honest with you, if we're going to clean it up, the DNR is going to be happy.
Right.
Okay, there's no issue. So if you want to make this a redevelopment site and you're committed to cleaning it up in order to get this to what you assumed it would be,
Right.
then that's a direction that the DNR is, I'm gonna start looking for grants, look for remediation and stuff. Obviously, the problem is that you create it yourself, so that's kind of one of the hard things when I apply for the grant and say, well, it was done. It kind of falls back. That's the one I'm gonna struggle to find something for you.
Right.
But that would give me direction on saying, okay, that is the wishes of the board at this time, and that's where to go. If you say, hey, let's see what we can do to reduce our costs, cut our loss, and do it into some type of park, which obviously then is less expensive and less, how do you say it? Sometimes when you get into this, you open a can of worms and I don't know how far it's gonna take me.
Right.
And that's where I want to be upfront with you, because if I find another grant that possibly can turn this into a park and help you get some of that done, it's pros and cons. And I don't want to steer you one way or the other. I hear clearly where you're saying, and I'm absolutely behind it. I just know what it's gonna take for me to get there. And I could hear some other people say, hey, I just wanna be done with this, and then I know which way to go there. But the DNR, you're right, may dictate cleaning it up. And
Right.
at that point, we're
Yeah.
there, but if I could steer it, I will.
What type of grants are out there, money-wise, to clean something up like this?
Well, it depends. So cleanup, there is some, obviously, idle site grant that you applied for before that you weren't successful the last time. Your site's been down. There's economic development for the fact that you would be transitioning it. There's some brownfield grants and things like that that we would have to look into to be able to see.
Yep.
There is obviously some stormwater control and things like that for the fact that there is an issue. Most of it is not retroactive of something that was done, by the community, but it's something that could be looked at to see for options. On the other end of the spectrum, and just to say, if we're gonna turn this into the park, I think you guys have probably applied for stewardship grants in the past. I also know that the big one that's out there right now that everybody's talking about is the MLS grant, where because of the trails and stuff that we proposed here and stuff, there'd be an option for you to consider there for a 90-10 split on doing some type of park-type, trail-type project that you could associate to. Either way, I know there's some commitment of putting a bridge over top of the waterway to connect the downtown to this area. That was always discussed back from 2013. So, to me, it's once I hear what you're thinking, I start steering my grant committee in that direction to look for different things is usually what I do. And then we just keep talking about it, and then once we hit a red flag or a green light, it's kind of like, it might dictate where it is, but the key is that we're talking, it's like that open brainstorm now. Then we deal with the DNR, and we gotta be willing to adjust based on what we find out. So I do think, like you said, those are the things I'm thinking about. That could help you out doing it. But I was hoping to have, how do you guys feel, like, redevelop it, parkland?
I
And
like
if
the
we don't
green
have that,
space.
then I think we gotta just keep proceeding as we go too. And I have no issue with that either.
I think from a village perspective, cost-wise to the village, being on the Audit and Finance Committee and seeing the challenges we have with trying to come up with money, I don't know how we would be able to fund a cleanup. Now, if the DNR requires it, obviously, we'd have to figure it out. We'd have to figure it out, but my temperature says I like the green space now.
But the material that's been buried is creating, is dirty. And at some point, it's going to get the groundwater.
Not necessarily.
Let the DNR make that decision.
The DNR is gonna dictate exactly what they want, and I don't think you're gonna be off the hook regardless if you leave it in the site. They're gonna make you monitor and do it, and there's always, to me, a risk. They're gonna look for finalizing it, cleaning up, and if we're talking about this 2 years from now because they're monitoring it, because we just wanna let it sit, you're absolutely correct. That could absolutely be what happens to you.
The groundwater monitoring wells we're gonna have to incur that cost as well.
Yeah, how much are groundwater monitoring
wells?
Oh, to me, that's the minor cost.
Yeah.
Right.
The big cost is dealing with me for the next 2 years monitoring it.
Yeah.
Not to be but think about it. I mean, you're paying someone to deal with the DNR to deal with this.
Yeah.
And then if you go ahead and bite the bullet and, just clean it out and get it done, then you got that huge cost. So I don't know. I'm pretty upfront, but you got a hard
Pay me
ship
now
no
or
matter
pay me
what.
later, right?
Do we have any idea what it would cost to clean the site up?
Well, I put an estimate together back in 2013 for the guy that was demolition it, and I was over 300,000, and that wasn't even to clean it up. That was just a deal with putting the buildings at the footprint there by taking out what's underneath it, putting good soil underneath. Because, I hate to say it, but when we looked at it the last time, it's like, I only care what's underneath the building could settle. If I had debris next to it, it wasn't the issue that I was worried about. And so in order to do that, they had to break through the walls that they didn't take out. They had to crush some of the concrete. We had to put new material in order to get a pad-ready site. But it wasn't a full pad. It was just, let's focus where the building pad-ready sites. Kind of like what we did at Home Again. So that was at least $300,000, and that was a pretty high cost that I had in there. But overall, no, I would expect that it could be even worse than that if I was thinking about it.
But you take the footprint of the old existing building, that's the materials that went back in that hole.
It was.
And it was deep.
But it was outside of that footprint too.
Well, it could be over excavation too, so.
Exactly. And so we'd have to go in there and explore it. But one of the things is that they didn't compact any of the material back, so there's no one that's.
No,
gonna put it-
they filled that hole in a day.
Yeah,
I know they did.
well, I don't, all I know is that hindsight's 20/20, and unfortunately, is like,
Yep.
there was absolutely no certification that you could put a building on top of it as something that did burn you, yes.
Yeah, it's just upsetting, that's all.
So a few years back, you had come up with the figure of 300,000, and that was to take it and get rid of it, and that was not buried.
I had a figure of 300,000, and I could probably dig that up. We did the idle grant for you, and we had an estimate of that cost in order to go and what it would take to remediate the site. But it wasn't the focus on getting the whole site ready. It was trying to find an end user and focus on fixing the areas where we were going to invest the money. So for example, if we put a big duplex down there, and I'll give you another one, I've done it before. If a parking lot gets a pothole, those are easy to fix. If a building settles, that's an issue. So when I see this type of thing and you do it, we always focus on the areas that have more long-term impact than I would. So if you're used to Columbus, and I'll just tell you that example again, and you see the Walgreens site, and then you see that little doctor clinic, and there's that fitness stuff, that's 20 feet of fill of people over time that just took it and kept pushing it over and over and over in order to fill it. We didn't dig it out and recompacted it. We put a huge pile on it and over-consolidated it. So we put like 8,000 yards of material just to get the compression down to take care of all of it. And then we dealt with where's underneath the building. How did we spread the footings? How do we make sure that the buildings stay in place? But if you get a pothole in the road, okay, that's an easy fix. So that's the stuff of things you start looking for. But at the end, then you're looking for an end use so that we can cap the site off and call it a day. And I can tell you right now, I'd rather see one big building than a bunch of these little buildings that to deal with it. But that's in order to get past the DNR, that they're going to be happy with leaving the rest of the site, and then also coming up with a way of capping it, which parking lots are a good way to cap groundwater from seeping in to where you have issues.
So if the DNR signs off on just, the basic minimum, can they change their attitude, their insistence 5 years down the road?
Typically, in my experience in all the different sites, and again, I think it was Lake Mills by the Walgreens had a big contamination that I had to do in a couple others. They're looking for closure as well. Once they know that it's not contaminating your groundwater and it's not getting there, I mean, let's face it, there's basements. I think a lot of water is just sitting in the floor of the basement and can't seep out. It's got concrete cutting it off. Okay, it has nowhere to go. So if it has the ability and we get rid of some of the debris and we clean some of it out, it doesn't seem like there's too much of a contamination. It seems like it's just isolated pockets. So if the DNR comes in and we can prove that and we give it the time, and then we find that end user and we put a parking lot over top of it, they'll close it. They'll close it and say that it's been dealt with and it's just documented what's out there. But if they know it's not causing any issues, there is ways to close it out and be done with it. And it's not uncommon to see it done this way. It's just that they always want to know, well, how did you take care of it? And some type of surface.
But that
usually does help.
basement floor may have been fractured,
Yeah.
and the water can still continue to go downward too.
It could, except if I put a cap on top of it that allows, it's like putting a roof on top of a house. It's like you don't want water in it. You just got to monitor it and make sure you minimize the amount of groundwater that can seep through and go out. But you're absolutely correct. There is ways for it to get through, but once you got it, they're looking for that remediation that says, okay, it's been done. If we're leaving it there, and if they don't allow you to do it, we're still dealing with it. So.
But the cost of, turning it into a park or something, there's cost to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's obviously grants for it, but there is cost to it, so you will have to cap it off same way, and sometimes putting a nice crown on it with topsoil in order to get the water to sheet flow off rather than seep in would be a way to cap it, but it's kind of like turning it into something and leaving it there, but not allowing the water to go through. Because right now, it's kind of like you got this nice compacted bowl, and then right in the middle, you got this, it's like you take a glass and you throw some stuff in, some stones, you're going to get water into it. Well, then you might put sand, you can still get water into it. There's always those gaps. Well, if you have a nice hard cap, you really reduce the amount of water that can get into it. Right now, it's just not the case. But you're absolutely correct. There is cost either way, no matter what you do. It's 100% a true statement.
Well, what I'm thinking is there probably is a heck of a lot more grant money out there for green space and parks than there is for development.
I don't know about that.
Remediation when we caused our own problem.
Right, exactly. That's the takeaway.
I think there's grants either way. I just don't
Right.
know where I'm gonna get lucky to find you something.
Right.
Let's say we clean the site up, and we do have some buildings back there, how fast, what's the payback on something like that?
You know, you tell me what you're putting up.
Huh?
You tell me what you're putting up. You got a TIF district, okay? You got something in place. The problem is that the way it looks like your TIF's performing and where things are, I don't know what the cost is for you to get someone to come in here to take their risk to put something down there.
That's it.
All right, it's not just about the business, about finding it. If I could find that right person, just imagine what it's gonna cost you guys to make sure they're incentivized to try and get this thing taken care of. So you have the land, you did have people interested in it, but until you get a grasp on what you can do out there, try and convince someone to come in and invest. And that's where you also have that issue. So getting a grant to remediate it, find a way to control it, have documentation from the DNR on what you have to do to take care of it. All those things are gonna be steps you're gonna have to go through before I can finally get you to the end user and tell you what the payback's gonna be.
Sure.
I can get you there, but it could be, I don't even want to exaggerate numbers, but imagine, spending $5 to get 10 cents back, okay? It might be something where it's hard for you to make that decision. Find a grant to pay for the $5, and then maybe you can start collecting 10 cents or break even. Okay, maybe that's an easier decision for you. And wherever that threshold is, this is where we start having a long-term fund trying to figure this out. I don't think this is gonna go away. I do think I have to submit it to the DNR, but I'm hearing right now from this board, we're not giving up on the fact that we always wanted this to be a developable site, and we're not giving up the fact that it could be a park because we wanna be done with it, but to keep going this and proceeding, and until we get some better direction to you on possible grants, things like that, you won't make a decision. Now, the one thing I'll tell you right now is if I can get you a 90-10 grant to put the trail in that allows you to do the floodplain study, and we talk about transitioning this into a park, that might be enough for you to say, dang right, we'll get rid of this if I can get a 90-10 grant.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But that only covers certain parts.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not gonna give you anything to cover up the problem. They're gonna give me 90% to build that trail, maybe put a bathroom, something like that in there. And then I can tell you right now, that grant is so competitive that I have to show a regional and economic benefit to it. And so I just wanna be upfront with you is that I see that grant as a solution, but the probability of you getting it, I say, what, under 5%? So but there'll be more. There'll be others.
If you connected that trail to the trail where.
The trail we already got through town, so that we
Yep.
don't have to go along the street.
Make it a
That-
trailhead, put a parking lot for people to
And-
come in there in order
yeah,
to stop and
yeah.
do, which helps out
And
with that.
get that bridge, get that other walking bridge across, that would be huge.
Attaching
Yeah.
to the other one.
I get the
Yep.
opportunity to go around the state talking about grants and different ways of economic development throughout all my communities. I can tell you right now, the competition for this 90-10 split that's due December 6th is extremely competitive. I got my list right here that I'm supposed to go through, and this is just mine alone. And there's probably 20 communities between townships, counties, and villages. The $18 million that they have set aside, you can use up to $250,000 as a minimum and up to $3.5 million as a max. Trails, railroad spurs, road reconstruction, transit, so if you wanted to buy buses in order to commute, along with, there's one or more trails for railroad reconstruction. Harbors, which obviously you won't be having a harbor here. Those are all options considered for this grant. Economic development is a critical part of this, and how it has some regional benefit we see as the big things. So if you do want to apply, you're kind of running low on time, but that type of thing might dictate your decision a lot more than, maybe that big business comes in that we can get a grant for to make them come in and do that is an option. I sent several people here to talk to some of your former administrators, and as soon as they came out knowing what the situation is, they said not even close to interested. So you got a little homework to do and a lot of stuff if we're gonna go down that road. I'm not against it, just that won't happen overnight.
If you were to convert this green space to more native plants, are there any DNR grants for,
Yeah.
so
a
in
stewardship
combination
grant.
to a bike trail, native plants?
There's grants out there for parkland. Obviously, you've acquired a land, so you wouldn't be able to get that cost recouped, but there would be options. I know it's part of your TIF. I know TIF is based on some type of development in order to perform. So all those impacts are things that you guys are being forced to deal with that I'm not gonna make it easy answer for you. It's just problem solving, but there is grants out there for green space as well. especially with that creek. I mean, the fact that we could do some restoration of the banks and the bridge, but there's never a 100% grant. That 90-10 is the best I ever heard, but just so you realize, those cost money too.
So to kind of recap this, Joe, you're asking us to give you a sense of where we might be at, but we don't know with the state how insistent they are going to be with cleaning up.
Yeah.
We do know that if it is just going to be greened over, they're probably not going to be as dogmatic as they would be if it was going to be, completely cleaned out.
I don't want to predict what the DNR is going to say. What I want to do is, if I know that everybody's thinking, let's look for grants and let's make this a park. Let's just say, gosh, we see it, it's going to be the cheaper option. It doesn't have to deal with it. We don't have to worry about the uncertainty. It's the one that has the soonest solution and the easiest way to get it done. If that's what I heard from you guys, I would try to be steering the DNR to find me solutions to get to that end result. If at the end of the day, I felt like there's actually a legitimate where you guys are interested in seeing the redevelop and see some solution and willing to put the extra time in to go through the remediation of taking apart the site, then I'd be talking to the DNR about those type of options. So it's more about not necessarily giving me direction, but giving me the ability to find a way to steer this. And right now, I don't know if I have to steer it. I think you're looking for options for taking care of it, but you want to keep everything on the table. So now it's just here, DNR, and making sure that they keep flexibility with us too.
But even putting it into a park, you could look at $150,000 or $200,000 to do that.
Easily.
Well,
Easily, that's right.
I stated my position. I mean, maybe some of you that haven't kind of given your indication on what you'd like to do would like to speak, and what you would like to do.
Well, my little 2 cents worth doesn't necessarily have to be this area, but I am very concerned about the senior citizens of our community. There is nowhere to go. At Home Again is completely filled, a fairly long waiting list. There's people there that could be living on their own, but they've chosen to go there. Cambridge definitely needs senior citizen housing
Yeah.
of some sort, whether it be apartments, assisted living, just something, someplace. Because they go to Fort Atkinson, Jefferson, Stoughton for activities. We could be doing all of that if we had a place. So,
You're right.
I go along with everyone for the least expensive route to fix this. But the other part of me says what could have been.
The could have been part is what you're looking at there, shows a senior complex that had ability for 55 and older to transition. It was kind of like going to be where they can come get their meals at the one place but yet live on their own, was the intent behind it, along with I think a library at one point was considered down there, and that unit apartment. So it was kind of like a mixed type of use. I can't answer. You're right. Hindsight is 20/20.
I know. I'm just stating my concerns.
I honestly appreciate the calmness of the group because, like I said, you've been dealt with a tough hand here, and knowing that this has been going on since 2013, no, there's no easy answer. So I don't know exactly if you want me to go green space or development, but I can't promise you this, that if you look to develop it, you're going to be looking for the best case scenario that gets closure on this at the least cost, and it could be a business, which I doubt, but it could be some type of living, but it's going to be things that pop up that are more grant-driven than I think than it is going to be about just trying to make sure it's for senior housing. And if you got an issue at Home Again and they might can be able to expand, you got the business that's right next to it. I don't know what else, but I mean there is potential. It's just unfortunate that I think the big bulk of that site could be difficult.
All right.
The only area that's still good is kind of like the north side of it. There's that area that wasn't touched. I always thought that was a potential, but get a road from there to there, it's a lot of road to put in for something at the end of the site. So I never, that was kind of like one of the drawbacks, is that you miss the whole beautiful bulk of it.
And that Home Again did have proposals out there for the use of that site if it was cleaned up.
Yeah.
Ted, what's your thought here as far as?
I think we should clean it up and get it ready to, and then also contact At Home Again and see if we can get them on board to maybe do an expansion here, because like Susan said, they're filled. And I think they would do an expansion to their building.
Okay.
Now, At Home Again might do an expansion and put it where your road is and try and stay out of it. I mean, and they're not against it, so I'm just throwing out the idea, but, you know, the potential of doing an expansion where there isn't contamination is something that you could also do.
That's true.
If you're looking for a complex, because like I said, I'd love to see you put one big building, and so all I only have to do is sacrifices right underneath it, rather than the whole thing. A parking lot getting a pothole never bothers me. But a building settling really does.
But over time, even if we don't clean up the site, that material is going to continue working up to the surface.
Yeah.
It will.
Well, what I've seen done in the past is obviously you're either going to build up or you're going to scrape it out. And either way, if I do it, I usually put in 2 feet. So let's say we just take off the top 2 feet and we over-consolidate it and just compact the heck out of it by putting something really heavy on top of it. And then you can build off of that. You're going to bridge a lot with 2 feet that you won't see the stuff come up and work through, but that issue is always going to fester down there. You're always going to be dealing with it. Whoever has it will have issues down the road just dealing with the differential of the different type of material. You're right. There is concerns, but there is some solutions to it that I have seen work. So if you want to see redevelopment, we can clean it all up. We can look for a redevelopment site. We can put a plan together and go after the grant. And then that's where I'd steer the DNR.
Paula? Anything?
I think I'd rather see it go to green space. Only because I don't know what even would go back in that area. I mean, I know At Home Again at one point was interested in it, and interested in doing this whole senior thing. I don't know if they've got the desire to still do that. Because I know we've gone back to them a couple of different times, and they've said they weren't interested. And so I just, and we don't have an economic development director anymore who's going out there and pushing and looking and trying to find people to, you know, to do this. And I would hate to do a development of, this is our industrial park, because I think our assisted living area wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to turn it into an industrial park,
True.
which at this point I think is the only, part of me thinks that's the only feasible development that I've heard people think we need in this village.
But
That's not the right space for it. So I don't know what I would put in there, which is why I would lean
But we could
towards
take a
green
look at
space.
the way Venable was done in Stoughton. There's other ones in McFarland, you know, where there's senior housing, and there's quite a bit of senior housing all concentrated in one area, and it's all full.
If you could go back to 2013 and not be dealing with this, it would be developed already.
Right.
Absolutely.
To vision that there wouldn't be something that come in, there would have been. It's just how much money is it going to take for you to get it site pad ready that you're going to burden on it, and is it worth it at the end? So if you're going to spend, again, exaggerating just numbers, but if you're going to put $500,000 in to get, let's say 60 or 40 units, okay, is it worth it for you? And that's what it comes down to me. So I don't know what those thresholds are. I'm making up numbers, so please, if I said you're putting in 100,000, you'd say, well, yeah, let's get it done. But at the end of the day, that's kind of to me what it comes down to. But if it was there, I'm not worried about it developing. It's just how much cost is it going to get to you so someone want to come and develop.
But the
And
initial-
that's my concern, is that even if we go in there and we say we've cleaned it up, will we have cleaned it up to someone else's satisfaction, to the point where they think they aren't going to run into something? You know, there's always going to be that question, what if they miss something?
And then there's
Yep.
a liability issue.
Right.
All right, Chris?
Well, I stated my position. I said initially I thought that'd be, you know, developing it would be the smart way to go, but I'm very concerned about the floodplain. And now, having dabbled in development a little bit, I think green space is probably the only logical way to go, especially looking at where our budget money is in the next 5 years, for instance. I don't think it's a responsible use.
But we also have to find out what the DNR is going to say.
Yes, well, that's
Exactly.
what we're trying to do.
Eric, what's your thoughts?
Well, to keep Cambridge, green space would be more appropriate.
That's a point.
The bike path would pull in nicely to what we currently are expanding. I would like to see At Home Again expand if they have the ability to, because we do need more housing, more utility users. You know, if I would have been here in 2013, it would have been great to see it developed. We need the development too. But
That was the intent of the board at the time, and the oversight of the board was overridden by a person, and
that's
the money, we
past.
had the money to clean up the site, is what I'm saying.
Well, on the bright side, we
Did
can.
we have the money in 2013 to clean up the site?
We spent $450,000 on that site. That's what we paid the developer to make a dirty site. So,
Okay, well,
If nothing else, we can return it to some sort of natural, get some grant money to better for the environment. Downstream people would appreciate
We can try.
floodplain. Yeah, we can try.
okay, here,
I think we should work it both ways to see what the grants are out there for redevelopment and also to put it in the park space. Either way, it's going to cost us.
Do you want the full development, full redevelopment, or a
Could we
smaller,
and do
compromise
some
smaller?
redevelopment and some to park?
Well, there was an original plan to just develop a certain amount of the
Yes.
site, and the rest of it was going to be green space anyway.
I think what you're looking for is a transition. What kind of give me the grant to do the best if I'm not forced to, and work with the DNR to minimize it?
Yeah.
If they only require me to clean up what's in the floodplain, the beautiful part, you didn't fill within the floodplain, or the guy that did it, didn't fill within the floodplain that was back here in 2013.
Sure.
So then if you look at it and say, listen, he didn't do it, you're gonna have to control it, come up with a conclusion, which is what I would hope the DNR says. It doesn't mean that we can go down a development path, we can go down a park path. And so if what I'm hearing is keep exploring the different grants and keep communicating and decide what you want to do, don't rule out anything, then I'm going to let the DNR have their crack at it and see if we can get them to at least resolve. But if they don't make me take it all out, I'll be honest, I don't want to. I'd rather focus on where the building is or where the park is and minimize it and just take care of what's underneath like we did with At Home Again.
Well, also you mentioned that those old concrete slabs, and there's some blacktop down there also. You take that out and,
It could be pretty good underneath that.
huh?
Those spots could be pretty good.
Those spots might be a good place to put a building.
Yes, it might. You're absolutely correct. We've pretty much confirmed with the DNR that those spots are a good chance that they didn't bury anything underneath.
So that's a lot of square footage right there.
There's some sewer and water issues closer to that end. You got the water that comes around and then jumps across, but yeah, we have solutions for that too.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the floodplain.
Understand. So
I'm willing to look at both, guys. I'm not against it, but then I'm gonna say right now is that this one grant is out there due December 6th. It's a 90-10. I guess, like I said, I'd give you a 5% chance of getting it, but you'd have to get pretty organized to get that submitted in.
I don't think we could organize to submit to that, not with everything else that we have going on right now.
Okay.
Thank you, though. I mean, it would be great if we were. It'd be great if we had this conversation 3 months ago. But I don't think we could pull something together in a month. Could we?
We'd be relying a lot on him.
I do it all the time, but it's really up to you guys. All I know is it's due December 6th, and you got 6 years to spend it.
and how long, what would your charge be to us to?
Depending on how, okay, out of all of them I'm doing, I have some that we're doing very cheap, and we have some that are doing up to 10,000 because they're putting a lot of time and effort trying to put this together. That's major plans. For you, putting this together and stuff, you could be looking at, let's just say 2,000, 2,500. But again, if you don't want to do it, I'm okay not submitting, because there will be other ones. The stewardship grant will come up at some point, the brownfield grants and stuff. There is other things out there, and if you get the right business, and they create jobs or do something, that is also an option. So believe me, guys, when I work communities, I don't care about a $2,500 project. All I care about is giving you options. So if you say we don't have time, I'm okay with that.
All right, here's where I'm at. This thing has been a mess. And I'm not going to go back 6 years ago. It's, you know, interesting, but it's irrelevant as far as where we're at. We don't know what the state's going to require of us. And I can see where, you know, depending upon what we would do, that will flavor it, but at the same time, maybe we look at this and, you know, we're still trying to get information. I don't know if we can give you anything more than that. You know, I'm listening, and we've got kind of a split board here as far as where we are at. What I don't like is if we end up with $500,000 of a cleanup, and that gets thrown onto the backs of Cambridge residents. That is a substantial sum of money. And then we don't sell it, we don't move it. That is unacceptable. So, if we can back it into something where, all right, we know it's going to be a couple $100,000, maybe we can't ever do anything with it, I'd be more interested in that than trying to, you know, Chris is over here with the slot machine or playing a roulette. And then betting that we're going to be able to do something with that land later on. So I'm asking you to kind of keep all that in mind as you prepare a response.
I can promise you right now is my goal is never to try and get it to where it's a full remediation, and I do not have any control over that. So whatever the cost is, we'll work on it, but I do appreciate what you guys are telling me, because that is giving me direction. It is. You guys have helped me out knowing that we got to keep proceeding with the different options, and I do think that we haven't said it directly, but I do think I have your approval to submit this to the DNR and keep that process going. So I know that was not the focus of most of our discussion, but they've been very cooperative. They were out there. They're the ones that even said, is like, this is just trapped water. So like at the end of the day, I do think they're on board. It's just a matter of, okay, what are they going to require? And that floodplain does become an issue that I'm concerned about. So I'll work with it, keep you posted, but I'm not going to rule out anything at this time. I'm just going to keep looking for options for you. And if you want me to come sooner for those, I'll be honest, you know, like I said, it's very difficult. I'm only dealing with one thing here in Cambridge. But like I said, there is deadlines and things coming up all the time on different things like that. I just don't know exactly how you guys felt. So now I'll just keep plucking away and see what I can do.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on here to our agenda. Correspondence. Lisa, there's nothing in correspondence?
Nothing in correspondence.
Okay. We've got,
The library board meeting.
Yes, it's going to be switched.
Yeah, it has been moved to the 21st of November, which is a Thursday
Yep.
night.
okay, 21st.
Yes.
All right, Economic Development will be meeting, our first meeting, we'll be kicking that off on November 18th. Water and Sewer, November 19th. And I had a question here for you on the village board, the public hearing. Is that going to be held before?
Public hearing will start at 6:30.
Okay.
At our normal starting time.
All right,
The board meeting will be immediately
Right after that.
right after it, okay. And then if people have questions, they can just be here and ask their questions during the open session. Or, well, during the part when we
Yeah.
talk about this. Okay, all right, I'll, anything else for referrals, staff for future agenda items?